Hey everyone, today we're going to talk to Crystal Privett. We've been connected a while, but we finally decided to talk. And she was sharing some stuff. I said, stop, stop, stop. We got to record. So we're going to go into all the details more. That way she's fresh talking to me. I can dig more into. Crystal basically is a mindset coach. She works on people's mind. So there's so many different aspects to it while she was explaining. So we'll dive into that. But she's also a real estate investor. She's in a BNI, which I used to be in. So all that stuff. I think there's another business I missed. But I'll let Crystal explain that. Crystal, kind of share your journey, what you used to do to what you're doing now and the businesses you're involved in.
Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Raj. So basically, what I do is I changed my life from being a stay-at-home mom, where I was a real estate investor. I flipped 15 properties in 15 years, and I had a vacation rental that I managed. And when COVID hit, like many Americans, there was a pivot that happened. I ended up separating from my 17-year marriage, 175 grand in 10 days. And I realized I had a medical condition that I wasn't aware of. I fell and broke my skull. And when I broke my skull, I was really worried about the traumatic brain injury, but I didn't realize there was more damage that had happened. And I had broken two of my teeth. And I ended up having a bacterial infection that ate my inside of my jawbone away. So I had a series of 13 surgeries. And at the very end of that last surgery, that's when I had a series of things that sent my life in a different direction. I don't know if any of you have had one of those calls or where your life has really shaken you up, but for me, it was the ending of that marriage, the losing 175 grand in business within about 10 days. I had the final of my 13th surgery, and then I fell and broke my ankle in 4 places, and my house was struck by lightning. So I was like, what is this trying to tell me? Something's going on here. And I was receiving a lot of resistance in my life. And I was like, what is going on that's causing all of this resistance? And a friend of mine was like, I've heard of this thing called subconscious reprogramming. I think you have something going on with your energy. And I was like, white flag. I was like, I will try anything at this point. Tried a lot of the traditional modalities to figure out what was going on. But my body kept talking to me. The universe was sending me these weird signs, and I couldn't really identify what it was trying to tell me. I didn't know that your subconscious mind doesn't have a verbal dialect. So it will use people, places, and situations to course correct you and get you back in alignment. I was clearly very off my alignment path, but I also was clearly very stubborn. I didn't realize what I was trying to communicate to myself. So I had gone to a women's retreat by my mentor, Jenny Harkle Road. And the first day I went to this training, I was like, oh my gosh, I'm going to be powerful for the rest of my life. If I can turn this pain into power, I'm set. Like I'm fueled up for an eternity. And that's what sparked my journey into subconscious transformation coaching. I get to train incredible Fortune 500 businesses. Yes, I'm a president of BNI Escondido, or I oversee about 50 businesses every week and help other people thrive on a personal and professional level. I'm also a director of BNI San Diego. We have the third largest networking group in all of the United States, with a little over 56 million so far this year. We're still in the early stages of this year, but we have about 800 businesses that I oversee as a director. And I use my now new title of Miss National United States Woman of Achievement to volunteer for veterans' mental health. So I've partnered with the Warrior Gamer Foundation, and we help veterans who are struggling with PTSD, anxiety, depression, overwhelm. The statistic used to be 22 veterans a day. I believe it's much higher and much underreported. And I believe the suicide rate is one of the new epidemics that we're struggling with as a veteran community. I give back to this because my grandfather was a POW. He did the Bataan Death March, and this was my to honor his memory since I never got to meet him. I love what I do. I love helping entrepreneurs level up. Everyone can benefit from this work on a cellular level. It only takes 17 seconds for something negative to create negative chemicals in our body. And then in 68 seconds, the cells of our body begin to respond to those thoughts that we're thinking. So just knowing what we all went through the pandemic, if it only takes 68 seconds to affect us on a cellular level, everyone really could use. It's like running an update on your phone. We can go in and reset one app at a time, or we can do a hard reset. Both are incredibly valuable and powerful. I've had entrepreneurs that have lost one of my had like 6 different businesses, and 5 of those businesses basically went under. And so he had one business left that was really struggling. And he came to me and he's like, Crystal, I'm spiraling. I don't even know if I want to live anymore. I don't know if I can come out of this. And we helped him over a series of months to really get out of that negative manifestation loop. I hadn't heard from him for a while because I allow my clients to come to me as they feel they need to. I'm not going to, it's really important for me to honor their timing. And I heard from him just recently, and he said, Crystal, my business just did $10 million this year. And now I want to work on relationships. So there's always something more we can dive into. It's really rewarding. Men love this process because we get to just transform the things that are holding you back. We don't have to go in and talk about it like traditional talk therapy. Many times that story is already played in our heads so many times, we don't even want to repeat it one more time. So I love that we get instant transformation. I use kinesiology, which is a form of muscle testing to help guide the process, and it's incredibly rewarding. So yeah, I have a lot on my plate. I do a lot, and I'm a single mom, but my passion really fuels me.
Awesome. There are a couple of things I wanted to note, right? Going back to the story, since your mindset coach, I don't know if you know about Peter Crone, architect, is known as a mind architect. One of the things it says is life presents you with situations to show you where you're not free. Another one I constantly remind myself is life happens for you, not to you. So everything comes along, it's teaching you. And there's another thing that reminded me. You were talking, all these things are happening to me. What's going on? What's it teaching? So there's a spiritual, I would say, highly spiritual person. I saw her interview. One of the things she shared reminded me again of what you're sharing is she said basically God, universe will give you a lesson. And if you don't learn, next lesson will be harder till you learn.
It
Right?
cranks up the volume. Yes.
Anyway, that reminded me of that. But it's funny. When we were talking earlier, I wanted to record because of these. Because when you were talking about things, oh, wait. We got to record this because I want to ask you questions and also share some things because I just restarted my whole series. And the last 3 or the 4 people I talked, everybody, the reason something bolted them to their new thing, coaching, whatever it was, the tragedy. That's something that happened, including me. Something happened to me. I got onto this whole personal development, meditation, spirituality, all that stuff because of that. I feel like that was a gift now. I really, whatever the tragedy happened, that was a gift for me. With that being said, going into your coaching, how do you, I know the 17 seconds, what's your name?
Abraham Hicks.
Yes.
Yes.
Kind of from there and somebody else. I've read.
Dr. Jeffrey Fannin was the one that did those studies that found that he put the electrodes on and studied my process. That was the science behind how they were able to map the brain as it was healing and growing. They came up with it. He calls it the 17-second rule.
Gotcha. So basically, I've heard that I always, anytime the negative thought comes, switch it a little bit, move it somewhere. But going back to your technique, the subconscious, when you do the work, when you're helping somebody, is that more of, could you share something that you have worked through? It doesn't have to be a big one, but just give an example for people to understand what you do.
Yeah, absolutely. I have some notes here from someone that I always keep anonymous who it was, but this person had hurt, resentment, depression, powerlessness, and wanting to feel accepted. They were having issues in their personal and professional life that were really holding them back from creating some financial success. And so we went in and I kind of reverse engineer. I'll have people tell me the negative feelings that they're having, because a lot of times it's a lot easier for us to focus on the negative. As a default way that our brain operates every morning when we wake up, 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% are a repeat of yesterday of our emotions. So if we know that, it's kind of a little bit of a negative loop and we need to interrupt that pattern. And so how do we do that is by the work that I do. Dr. Bruce Lipton tells us that if we have an emotion, it's causing us to not react with the wisdom until we rewrite that your emotion. So we really need to go in, like you said, it begins with the awareness. But so we basically figured out those were the things that were holding him back. And we created a statement that happiness, appreciation, and joy controls my life. And I am tolerant of other people's values. That was what was helpful for that individual with that goal. So we actually took that statement, and that's where the kinesiology comes in. I do the muscle testing to see if you believe it or not. And we actually want to find what you don't believe. And I'm always like, okay, you don't believe it. That's great. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we want to find what you don't believe, because if you already believe it, we don't need to work on it. So he did not believe that statement. And then I'll use the kinesiology to take it another level. So I have different forms of the reprogramming. So there's lots of forms of subconscious reprogramming. And I have probably about 37 different tools in my toolbox that can take me down different routes. But the most predominant are there's 3 ways to access it. If you're ready to go straight into transformation, then we do what's called a balance, which is you're going to be balancing the hemispheres of your brain, really getting that full brain coherence. And that's when you're ready to go straight in. Or if you need more clarification why you feel a certain way, there's another 3 paths that we can go down. And then there's some more that are more of the factory reset that we talked about that go a lot deeper. And those are really an hour-long session where you're bringing up things that you might not have even thought of or realized that were running in the background. It's kind of like your cell phone. When you have your cell phone, you're looking mostly at the screen and that's what you're concerned with. But it's actually the parts and the programs behind the scenes that are really operating that phone. That's like our subconscious mind. It's really operating us 95% of the time, but those are the unconscious things that we're not even thinking about. So the brain is really formed primarily in those first 7 years of life. And so even the situation we talked about, all that stuff that was really happening at that moment, it actually wasn't that stuff that was really bothering my spirit. It was the stuff that happened in the first 6 years of my childhood. So we didn't actually discuss this yet, but during those first 6 years of my life, not only was I sexually assaulted, but it actually turned into a form of human trafficking that I kind of found myself into by my late father, who passed away, had created a small group of individuals that as a child, he really stole my innocence, and that loss of my childhood, really, I didn't realize it until, because I was from a small farm town, I didn't realize it until later on when I was in high school, how different my childhood was from other people. And I was sexually assaulted as a freshman by a couple senior athletes. Absolutely. Thanks for having me, Raj. So basically what I do is I changed my life from being a stay-at-home mom, where I was a real estate investor. I flipped 15 properties in 15 years, and I had a vacation rental that I managed. And when COVID hit, like many Americans, there was a pivot that happened. I ended up separating from my 17-year marriage, 175 grand in 10 days. And I realized I had a medical condition that I wasn't aware of. I fell and broke my skull. And when I broke my skull, I was really worried about the traumatic brain injury, but I didn't realize there was more damage that had happened. And I had broken 2 of my teeth. And I ended up having a bacterial infection that ate my inside of my jawbone away. So I had a series of 13 surgeries. And at the very end of that last surgery, that's when I had a series of things that that sent my life in a different direction. I don't know if any of you have had one of those calls or where your life has really shaken you up, but for me, it was the ending of that marriage, the losing 175 grand in business within about 10 days. I had the final of my 13th surgery, and then I fell and broke my ankle in 4 places, and my house was struck by lightning. So I was like, what is this trying to tell me? Something's going on here. And I was receiving a lot of resistance in my life. And it was like, what is going on that's causing all of this resistance? And a friend of mine was like, I've heard of this thing called subconscious reprogramming. I think you have something going on with your energy. And I was like, white flag. I was like, I will try anything at this point. Tried a lot of the traditional modalities to figure out what was going on. But my body kept talking to me. The universe was sending me these weird signs, and I couldn't really identify what it was trying to tell me. I didn't know that your subconscious mind doesn't have a verbal dialect. So it will use people, places, and situations to course correct you and get you back in alignment. I was clearly very off my alignment path. And I find because of all my past trauma, like I said, I'm full of rocket fuel. People are like, how have you done so much in 4 years? I'm like, because I had an endless supply of trauma that when I was able to turn that pain into power, it slingshotted me to success because I lead with my heart and I'm very authentic. And people can tell when you're lying, but nobody can really fake energy. So that's something that people are always like, wow, your energy is really infectious. And I really honor that. And I try to stay very true to who I am, not because of myself, but because of I believe others deserve to know that we can break free from this pain and you can be wildly successful despite what we went through. I like to say we're so much more than the sum of our past experiences.
That's awesome story. Reminds me of something when you said the energy. I don't know, you're familiar with landmark by any
Mhm.
chance? Okay.
Yep.
I don't
They
know.
do a little more past life type stuff. Yeah.
Not past life stuff. It's more about discovering what is running the show.
Hmm.
Essentially, what's we have known knowns, we have known what we know we don't know, but our life is run by the subconscious, which is not known. But the main thing,
Consciously competent, unconsciously competent. Yeah.
stories that are running, we don't even know that they're the stories. And we suppress whatever we didn't realize. But one of the things that we talk about is I was also a volunteer coach in communication courses. Is anytime somebody's experiencing something that results or something, the first question was, who are you? Who you being is going to get you what you're seeking. And that's what, you kind of shared why you're experiencing this result is because who you being, who you are being, the energy, whatever comes from who you're being. Anyway, I just want to share that. But couple of things. One is I'll probably introduce this person to you. She's also a coach. She's more into the Indian community. But yeah, similar. She was childhood trauma victim. She didn't even know. And then I don't know if I want to share this, but our family also, she found out. And then they blame her. So it's a trauma. So that's that whole thing. People underestimate how much that's going on. And then the book, I'm guessing you might have read the book Body Keeps the Score.
Yeah.
Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
So that's something when you talked about PTSD and all that, there's a huge research done how that is based on the body keeping the score, how they get screwed up their life because the trauma they're suppressed. So it's a very, very important factor. And I know you didn't share that, but you do support the victims, sexual assault victims organization, which is I support the Underground Railroad. I don't know if you know that.
Yeah.
That's one of my favorite organizations. But people need to be aware of that. Be a lot more to it than people realize. So anyway, I just want
And it can go into affect different areas of your life that you wouldn't expect. You wouldn't think that that sexual trauma would allow me to attract more narcissistic people, but there's a correlation between the two. And like you said, the body does keep score because of all of that sexual trauma. When my dad did pass away, I actually went postmenopausal at 33. And if you look at the correlation, the sexual organs and the sexual assault, there was a correlation between the two. And so I would implore people, if they have a medical concern that they can't figure out, that maybe it is the body trying to tell them a lesson, or to identify maybe trying someone like me, because they're a lot of time they'll try to prescribe you something and that won't work. For me, my body kept changing the issues that I was having until I was like, what? Even my doctor was actually one of the reasons why, and looking at this, because she was like, Crystal, this isn't normal. We'll heal one part of you and then something else pops up. It was like whack-a-mole with my health. It was like we'll fix something and something else would pop up. And I like to explain it this way. If you're feeling that resistance in your life, it's probably an indicator that you're going in the wrong direction. If you're feeling a lot of synchronicities in life, it's like breadcrumbs from your highest self saying, go this way, follow the path of the flow and the synchronicities. So if you're finding a lot of resistance in life, just tune in to your heart and ask yourself, am I going in the right direction? What is it that I'm not seeing? And sometimes it's easier to not do this all alone. It's kind of like a blind spot. I didn't know what I didn't know at the time. When I tried this process, I was like, oh, thank goodness, I finally found a way to transform that negative energy, because I don't know how much longer I would have been able to endure had I not learned how to translate what my subconscious was trying to communicate to me.
No, that's a great point. I guess I'm going to be careful with my words because it's family, but yeah, I've told some people that when they're going through stuff, maybe look at more than what you're going through, the physical ailments. Maybe there's
Mhm.
something going on, suggested things, but it's always a science way. So the woo-woo stuff, right? Most people say, oh, it's this woo-woo. If it's not seeable or testable, you don't know. But no, it's science. It is science, but then people don't want to consider that science. So what Crystal is saying absolutely is right. I've seen that. In fact, anytime I barely ever get sick, but nowadays when I get sick, I know it's something going on that
I
might
have a really great book that I like to recommend. I use it almost every day for my clients. Looks about like, it's really massive. It's called Messages from the Body and Their Psychological Meaning. It was written by Dr. Michael J. Lincoln.
Okay.
And he's no longer with us, but what he was in the child care foster system, and he documented these children from infancy to adulthood, and he would write down the ailments that they would get based upon what traumas they had, and created this incredible book of knowledge that shows you if you broke your ankle, it explained how I was afraid of moving forward in life,
Mm.
and address some of the family dynamics behind why I was feeling that way. Oftentimes, if people shoulder pain, it's the weight of the world on their shoulders. There's literally a psychological meaning behind the pain. And it's very interesting when you really do dive into it, because sometimes it's just begins with the awareness. Like you said earlier, when you have a negative thought come up, you want to try and be aware of it to change it. Also, if you have an ailment come up, be aware that it could be teaching you something, because your subconscious could be using your body to get because like I said earlier, it doesn't have a verbal form of dialect. Your subconscious doesn't know time, so time doesn't exist. So something traumatic in the past is still just as traumatic today in the subconscious mind. Consciously, you may have been able to push past it and think that you've moved past, but that movie is repeating in the back of your subconscious until you rewrite that movie. So that's something that we can also do with, especially with the PTSD survivors. Like if they hear a really loud bang, it doesn't even take them the 17 seconds rule. It can be instant, where they automatically go back into that fight or flight mode. They feel like the bullet is whizzing right past them, or the Hummer is exploding. And then the cellular response to their body, because the subconscious doesn't know time, is exactly as painful as it was back then. And that's why a lot of times they don't know how to get past that pain, because it's so instant and it's so heavy. So what we do is we rewrite that, and we can get them relief and transformation that really allows them, because if you're stuck in a fight or flight mode, your body cannot heal in fight or flight. It's just the way that the body needs to have that homeostasis in order for it to really be able to heal and rest. They were having issues in their personal and professional life that were really holding them back from creating some financial success. And so we went in and I kind of reverse engineer. I'll have people tell me the negative feelings that they're having, because a lot of times it's a lot easier for us to focus on the negative. As a default way that our brain operates every morning when we wake up, 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% are a repeat of yesterday of our emotions. So if we know that, it's kind of a little bit of a negative loop and we need to interrupt that pattern. And so how do we do that is by the work that I do. Dr. Bruce Lipton tells us that if we have an emotion, it's causing us to not react with the wisdom until we rewrite that mirror emotion. So we really need to go in, like you said, it begins with the awareness. But so we basically figured out those were the things that were holding him back. And we created a statement that happiness, appreciation, and joy controls my life. And I am tolerant of other people's values. That was what was helpful for that individual with that goal. So we actually took that statement, and that's where the kinesiology comes in. I do the muscle testing to see if you believe it or not. And we actually want to find what you don't believe. And I'm always like, okay, you don't believe it. That's great. And they're like, wait, what do you mean? I'm like, well, we want to find what you don't believe, because if you already believe it, we don't need to work on it. So he did not believe that statement. And then I'll use the kinesiology to take it another level. So I have different forms of the reprogramming. So there's lots of forms of subconscious reprogramming. And I have probably about 37 different tools in my toolbox that can take me down different routes. But the most predominant are there's 3 ways to access it.
Awesome. I'll be posting Crstals Info. Obviously, there are multiple things, so I'll be posting whatever I get from her with the videos and the clips I'll be posting on LinkedIn. Reach out to her if you're passionate about either the sexual abuse victims or the veterans. Both are close to me. Love those type of work. So awesome. We didn't get into the books you wrote. Would you share a little bit? Obviously, once you send me that information, I'll post that info too. But share a little bit on the books you wrote.
Yeah, my first 5 or 6 books all went to charity for women's causes to help support some of the causes I told you before. But my flagship book is called Crystal Clear Mindset. And what it is it's more than just a book. It's a toolkit built into a book. You get a mental health at the beginning, and you can do in the middle and at the end to track your progress. But I broke it down into 12 different sections that you can really do the test and assessment, track where you're at, and then go through each of those 12 areas. Each chapter is one of those 12 steps. And you go through and identify what's holding you back in finances, relationship, your career, all these different individual aspects that I believe really encompass who we are. You can go through at the end of the chapter and follow the exercise and remove what it is that is bothering you in that area. Some people learn different ways. You can either read through it, or I have embedded an online course that I walk you through each step, and I give you some options on how it is you might want to feel. Like the statement we read earlier about happiness, appreciation, and joy controls my life, and I'm tolerant of other people's values. So that there'll be options like that, and you can read through and be like, oh, this is what I feel like I'm trying to achieve. You can use my suggestions or make up your own, but you basically get the opportunity to rewire yourself in those 12 different areas. And you can go back and use the book infinitely, because maybe you worked on your social life and some areas that we were low on, and maybe you identified one of those 12 areas. You're like, I might need to do this one a couple times on different areas that are bothering you. It's kind of like an infinite book that you can go in and continue to work on your progress. I actually have it as a Kindle version for 99 cents on Amazon, because I really wanted everyone to have access to mental health support. Not everyone can afford some of my VIP packages or my private sessions. I wanted mental health access to be available for anyone in any stage.
Awesome. Well, there are many more things I want to ask, but lack of time. I'll dive into the last 3 questions. Maybe we'll come back again, revisit some stuff, maybe another time. But my last three questions is, what's the best book you read that you would recommend everybody reading? First question. So I'll ask the next questions as you answer.
So there's so many. I'm going to use a different one than I normally ever talk about because I'm a little bit of a quantum entanglement nerd. I really like some of that science behind how we are the way we are. But this book is actually called The Divine Matrix. It's by Greg Braden. And in that book, it talks about how they broke the human genome into a sequence based on numbers using the Hebrew language.
Yeah.
And there was actually a message written in our DNA based on deciphering this. And that message said, God eternal within the body. And I just want to let everyone know that the same creator, whatever you call that, that thought we need to have the heavens and the skies and animals, they thought that the universe was not complete until you were here. And you have a purpose, and just reminding you that God is eternal within you. We were meant to be created as creators in his image. And I believe that if we can tap into our true potential, anything is possible.
Awesome. Yeah, I was going to dig into one thing when you mentioned about when you went to this resort for women, the one you went, then it called you, which is, in other words, talking about purpose. When we figure out the purpose, then it'll excite us. Then we know that's what we're there for. Anyway, didn't have, I didn't want to get it, but this kind of
Divine guidance. Yeah.
divine, yeah, what you want to call it, divine guidance, whatever you want to call it, that's what we meant. So awesome example of that. All right. The next question is probably hearing you through the, if people have heard you through this interview, probably figured out, but what inspires you to get up and do what you do every day?
I'm very intentional, and it's interesting because I've been through so much trauma, especially through men, but I really have a softness and a compassion for men, even despite what I've gone through. And I feel like because everything I've endured, I could be very callous, I could be very jaded, but I very intentionally operate with a softness and a kindness and a compassion for others. So I would say my superpower actually is my compassion. That because I've been through hell and back, I'm like, hey guys, we got to take a left here. I know this way. I've been here through this a lot of times. So if you're going through a hard time, don't stop, keep going. That's a part of the message that I like to bring to people is, like you said earlier, it's happening for you, not to you. And once you can decipher that, everything's a lot easier when it's in the rearview mirror. It's a lot easier.
Awesome. Well, the last question is, what's the one tip that has helped you that can help others?
Ooh, okay. I have a really great visualization practice because we talked about the 80-20 or the 80-90 rule, where 80% of our thoughts are negative and 90% of them are a repeat of yesterday. And what's interesting is every evening right before we go to bed, our brain downloads everything we saw and heard from the day. So a lot of the times, the reason that 80-90 rule is happening is right before bed, we're like thinking of the things we didn't get done or trying to project what we want to do already for that next day. Because our subconscious mind doesn't know the difference between imagination and reality, if you spend just a couple minutes, even 2 minutes, 5 minutes if you're an overachiever, just lay in bed and visualize your very best life. Think of every detail of what it will look like. Will you be standing on stage? Will you be receiving an award? Will you be volunteering? What will your posture look like? What will your bank account look like? Who will be in your life with you? When you send these signals to the universe, it activates your reticulating activating system, which means that now your body and your mind will be looking for these things in your life. And you will wake up in a residual of your very best life instead of a residual of the things you didn't get done or the things you were struggling with. So that's one really practical and easy application that people can use at nighttime to really tap into what's helping them or what's holding them back. And I also have a free mental health assessment that gives you 3 different tips to subconscious success. And all you have to do is text the number 26786. That's 26786 and type in the word crystal, Crystal to 26786, and it will send you a copy of that mental health assessment. You get the wheel where you can track the 12 areas of your growth so you can kind of see where you're at mentally and where the areas you might want to refine a little bit, but then it also gives you 3 tips to really help rewire yourself for success. So that would be something if you're struggling, I'd say that's a really great starting point to tune into.
Yeah, and then I'll try to get that from Crystal and post it with the clips I post and the video I post. That way you don't have to remember, maybe just use that. But yeah, if you're too lazy to read that stuff, then maybe, yeah, remember what Crystal said and text to her. I know that the tip was, first of all, excellent. And there is science behind it in the sense that, in my view, what I've learned is brain automatically is there to protect us. So obviously, it's always trying to protect against any negative stuff. So automatically, that's why it's going. It's not don't blame the brain, just notice that and take care of it. And then what Crystal said is amazing. I kind of tried to do that. There are times I've done it well, I haven't done it well. I don't maintain a consistent practice. That's the issue. So yeah, text her.
But you're so right, because the brain is not actually created for memory. The brain was created for survival. So that's why sometimes the person won't remember something if it was too traumatic, or later on in life, they'll remember something after they were triggered, but they couldn't remember it for a very long period. And just being aware that it was created for survival, not memory, and it can actually alter your perception of things. So question what you're thinking, question why you're thinking it, and don't be afraid to ask for help.
Exactly. That itself, we can go into another podcast, because what I've learned now is everything your mind tells is 100% wrong. So, there's a whole different discussion.
There's some percentage wrong. There might be some percentage right. I'm going to give my brain a little credit.
Well, yeah. So there's a thing, if you start noticing, I've started noticing that, right? Anytime the brain goes into this whole narrative about what's happening or what somebody's saying, 99.9 or 100%, I find it wrong. What your instinct, what you're feeling is right. Normally, if you're feeling right, or if you're feeling the person, oh, I don't want to go near the person, that might be right. But the thinking automatically based on our past, whatever.
And your perception, it does change things. That's why I think a great example is 2 different siblings raised in the same environment, same parents, but they can have totally different perceptions on life. Your coding is different just because that's who we are, and we have different lenses we see the world through.
No, exactly. That's why I said if you start getting into it, we'll probably go into another whole new podcast. I don't want to say it, but that's anything. Anyway, if anybody has not read Michael A. Singer's Soul or Surrender Experiment, that would be a great one to read about what I was talking about, noticing your brain. Anyway, with that, we'll end for now. Maybe next time we'll dive into that. Have episode 2 of Crstals, thoughts. Thank you again, Crystal, for taking the time. I'll be posting all the links and text. You can send it to get that free evaluation. Watch out for those and get those. Again, Crystal, thanks for taking the time.
Thank you, Raju. It was a pleasure.